Okay, sorry, actually recording करना भूल गया था मैं. That's why. Um, where is it? So we are going to count a middle. So we are going to create a new middleware where we can count the visitors of my websites. So for that, what I will do here, session is a dictionary object. Here, session is a dictionary object which store the data, which store the user's data in key value form. So I store my all visitor counter. So I will store my visitor counter in session with vs key. With which key? Vs key. So here simply in simple word, here I am going to check. Here I am going to check, is there any vs key in my keys list, session keys. That means, is there any vs name is there any key with the vs name in the key list of the sessions? If there, then I'll retrieve it. So vs equals to request dot session of vs. So vs key की keys को मैंने fetch किया. That was the simplest task over here. If I fetch for before request processing, I'm just fetching that previous value of the session. Another one. Again, after response will be get. Once the response will be get, now I'll get the response from the server. Response equals to get response of request. Once I get it, once I get the visitor counter, previous visitor counter, if any, if is there any visitor counter, previous one, so I'll get that, and then I'll get the response. Once I get the response, what I will do, I increase my visitor counter by 1 and again update into the session. So again I'll check here. After getting the response, again I'll check, again is there a visitor counter, so I have to update it. So I have to update it by 1. So session of vs equals to vs plus 1. My counter get increased after the response. Once the response will be get to the client, so my counter will be get increased by 1 if there. But what happened if the user is not, so I'll suppose to start my counter with 1 na. If the vs is not there, so I have to start my counter with 1. So if else, if there, my voice is breaking, to all my voice is breaking. Prachi, just do one thing, left yourself and rejoin. Maybe a network problem at your side, maybe. Just do it. Okay, so here again I'm repeating, here we are checking that is there any vs counter in your session. If here yes, then I will be increase that counter by 1, because I previously, before processing my request, I'll save my vs counter if there in vs. So I just increase the previous counter with 1. Now else, if my request is first time, then I will be set my session, then I will be set my session counter is equals to 1, and then I'll return the response. So this is my simple thing to count the visitors of my websites. and in my views I will be print them. In my views I will be print them from getting from the one. So यहाँ पे मैं उनको get करता हूँ request dot session of vs. So here I'll fetch it from the session and print it. Counter is how much? Saved it. Save this one also. Now I'll execute over here only. So I'll open a terminal. Or I'll create my another terminal. Let's see. So go to the location. So Python manage dot py run server. First app slash welcome. Response is not line number 42. SS again. Response. Control S. I'll revert. Line number 50. Key error. Local variable we have selected for assignment. So by default the visitor counter will be 0. I'll refresh it. Counter will be 2. Two visitors are there. 3, 4, 5. जितनी बार भी if I refresh the page, the counter will be get increased by 1. If I open in new browser, let's see, I'll open in new browser, uh, copy, my counter will be increased by 1 more, 13. देखो यहाँ पे 12 था, यहाँ पे if I open in new browser one more, the counter is again increased by 114. If I open again, जितनी बार भी आप visit करोगे particular page को, the counter is always get increased by 1. The counter is always increased by 1. So here you can see my counter is increased by 1 always. Refresh 16 हो गया because other browsers I visited. यहाँ पे जाओगे तो 15 is there. यहाँ पे जाओगे तो 14 is a 13. So if I refresh, so last counter is was 7 16. So if I refresh here, how much counter will become? Now here the counter will become how much? The last counter is was 16. So one more will be get added in that. That means it's become a 70. Here it's 14, so it become a 18 directly. 19, 20, 21. जितनी बार भी आप पर्टिकुलर पेज को विजिट करोगे, the counter will get increased by 1. And doesn't matter that in which browser. If you are using any other browser as well, then it will be affected. So for every browser. So I'll do this same thing will be with the help of the sessions. So जितने भी मेरे counters आते हैं, मैं I'll save my counters. So यहाँ पे मुझे just print करना है. I just want to get my what I'll say. I'll just get my counter from the session and print it here. And यहाँ पे हम लोग उसको manage कर रहे हैं. So whenever user will be get counter, the counter will get increase. So I hope you are cleared it. So आप लोग भी try करो. First of all, you have to create a function with this name. Function visitor middleware. Initialize it, and then we have to create a function count visitors. तो यहाँ पे हमारा पूरा logic है where we are count our visitors. You can do with the cookies as well. If you have we can do with the cookies as well. हम लोग cookies का भी use कर सकते to achieve this task. तो आप cookies से भी try कर सकते हो, not an issue there. So आप लोग try करो ये वाला, and if any doubts just ask me. Make sure that ये VS को 1 0 से पहले 1 कर लो. By default value will not 0, it will be 1. So अगर मैं stop भी करता हूँ server, if I stop my server is get initialized. So for first time it shows me 1. First time it shows me 1. Make migration, migrate. We are working on a session, na? See, I'm repeating. We are use a session object. So session object need the tables database. Session object needs the database. So if you want to use a SQLite database, तो हमारे पास by default setting SQLite की होती है. So we can go with the SQLite as well. तो आपको क्या करना है, make migration and migrate you have to perform over there enough. Otherwise change the MySQL details डाल दो यहाँ पे. Configure your MySQL database. Where is the database? हाँ. Configure your MySQL database. Otherwise SQLite 3 के साथ भी आप continue कर सकते हैं. Not in problem that. So choice is yours. If you want to work with the MySQL, otherwise put the MySQL detail. Otherwise continue with the same. So आपको make migration and migrate command करनी है and then run server. URL में कुछ नहीं किया, as it is जो welcome ही था, which you I did yesterday only. Only this much. And यहाँ पे first को encode किया. Poonam, it's showing a proper counter to you after each refresh. Great. Others, please revert in chat fast. Are you done or not?
सर मेरा नहीं हुआ.
क्या आ रहा है error?
404 की एरर है.
404 URL आप proper check किया, project URL में spelling and URLs app URL में spelling, in both URL spellings are correct.
प्रोजेक्ट के यूआरएल में और
projects.urls.py and app.urls.py दोनों में spellings are spelling must be same. ये और कोई कर रहा है क्या practically? What Reshma, what about you? Shivani, what about you? Prachi, are we doing a practically? Great, Reshma is done. Okay, so you are doing after the session. Great. ठीक है. You can do it. Yogita, what happening? Resolve or let's share
नहीं
this.
नहीं सर सॉरी.
Just share the screen. Let me check. Jyoti, I hope you also doing a after session. Gaurav, show me the
So
error.
I'll I'll do after session.
Okay, okay, no problem. Uh,
Not even after session, sir. I'm in hospital, as you know that.
oh, you are
Yeah.
hospitalized.
Sorry.
आप हॉस्पिटल में हो?
नहीं मतलब मैं एडमिट नहीं हूँ.
ओके ओके ठीक
मेरे
है.
मेरे जीजा जी है, उनका मेजर एक्सीडेंट हो चुका है, so that's why.
ओके ओके नो प्रॉब्लम. ठीक है, चलेगा. whenever you get the time you can do it. हाँ.
Yeah, sure, sir.
First app. First app. योगिता दैट urls.py का यू कैपिटल है क्या ऑन ऐप?
ये नहीं.
हाँ, ओपन इट. ओपन करो ना उसको.
हम्म, ये
ये आपका प्रोजेक्ट वाला है, ऐप वाला, दोनों सेम ही फाइल है क्या?
नहीं ये ऐप वाला है. नहीं ये ऐप वाला है ना, और
ओके,
प्रोजेक्ट वाला ये है.
ठीक है. ठीक है, अभी ब्राउजर पे जाओ, क्या एरर है देखो. नहीं दो. गो टू द ब्राउजर. एंटर, जस्ट एंटर इट विदाउट राइटिंग एनीथिंग. एंटर इट, डोंट राइट एनीथिंग. हाँ. सो अभी 8000 के बाद स्लैश फर्स्ट ऐप लिखना है आपको, आपका रूट यूआरएल, योर प्रोजेक्ट यूआरएल, फर्स्ट ऐप स्लैश वेलकम. एंटर.
हम्म,
आ गया.
हाँ.
Okay, my screen is visible to all again. Okay, no problem. So now we will move to head, which is a next type. जैसे मैंने बताया कि there are two ways to defining a middleware. First one is a function based, another one is a class based. The same thing we will do it with the class based also. So let's see how we can do with the class based. Point two. I'll copy this same thing. Paste. Class based middleware. नाउ आई डू द क्लास बेस्ड मिडलवेयर में मैं कुकीज का यूटिलाइजेशन करता हूँ. तो आपको कुकीज से भी कैसे करना है काउंटर विजिटर काउंटर्स को, तो पहले हम लोग नॉर्मल करेंगे, देन विल गो विद द विजिटर काउंटर अगेन. सो क्लास बेस्ड मिडलवेयर, आई क्रिएट इट. So for that, what I will do, I have to create one class. I have to create one class, my middleware. Class with any name. It's not my middleware is always my middleware. I'll give the name of class over here. And within that, we have to write it some special methods. Is it recorded? Huh? Let me check once. Is it? It is recorded. Where it is? सो पहले मैं यहाँ पे आपको ये बता रहा हूँ कैसे सिंटैक्स. सो फर्स्ट अपन मिडलवेयर नेम. तो माय मिडलवेयर की जगह पे हल्की तो मिडलवेयर क्लास नेम, वॉट एवर द क्लास नेम यू वांट टू गिव. Middleware class name. After that, we have to write it some methods to perform some task. So to initialize, who will be help to initialize the class? Anyone can give me answer. Who will be help you to initialize the class? Which special method you learn in object-oriented programming to initialize the class? जैसे if you remember in function initialize. So here we want to write a code for initialize the middleware. So can anyone tell me which method of your class is used to initialize the class? I hope you are remember about a constructor. Constructor is used to initialize the class
Init.
object. Yes, init. Absolutely correct.
Init method.
Yes, yes, absolutely correct. तो पहला मेथड इसमें आता है आपका def डबल अंडरस्कोर init डबल अंडरस्कोर self colon. So the first statement, oh here we should write it. So init method of your middleware class, middleware constructors contain two parameters. One is the self, another one is the get response. First one is the self, second one is the get response. Enter self dot get response equals to get response. So here we have to initialize our middleware. So and any other code. Any other code to initialize the any other code initialize the middleware if needed. Otherwise make it blank. तो ये आपका पहला फंक्शन init. After that we have to call a method def double underscore call double underscore self. This particular method will be called. This particular method will be called before request processing. जैसे यहाँ पे आपने फंक्शन में देखा था कि बिफोर कॉलिंग द गेट रिस्पॉन्स फंक्शन we have to write it the code. Here we want to write a code. Here we want to write a code to be execute for each request before view function call. So same thing will be here also. The same thing I should write it here as well as per the syntax. So this function will be execute. This function called by server before view function call. This function call by the server before before view function call. तो view को call करने से पहले this function will be called. Make sure that you have to write it double underscore call double underscore because internally it get called. So we can't change the spelling over here. Next function will be there. That function name is what? Def process. Def process underscore view in the bracket def underscore bracket which contains some parameters again, over there. The parameter name is what? Request, comma, view function, request, comma, view function, comma, view arguments, args, comma, awargs, keyword arguments of views. So these all parameters we should write it there. So this function will be called. This function is also doing the same thing for you. This function will be do the same thing for you. This function will be called just before. This function will be called just before the view is called. At same of both of them. Here also, abhi we got we have a request over there. We have a request over there. So यहाँ पे भी हम लोग वही कर सकते हैं. Just before वाला है, before view function call. After one where there is execute. So where here I'll write it the code. So here I'll get the response. Response equals to get self dot get response. Self dot get response. Get response. And जैसे आपका कोड था यह मतलब in function based view we are calling before execution or after. The same thing will be here also as well. The same thing will be here also in the call function itself. But it provides some additional methods also for us, and then we have to return. Then we have to return the response. ये तो basic methods are there which get automatically out, but some extra methods also there. This function will, if you don't want to write a call method, then we have an option of the process view. So it takes these kind of parameters are there. So this function will call. Sorry, this function will call. This function will be called just before the view called. Just before the view called this one. Apart from that, we have another function is that def process exception करके, which taking the same number of which taking a two parameters. One is a request, another one is exception. So when this function will be called, so this function will be called when the exception will be raised. So this function will be executed if exception is if an exception is raised, if an exception is raised, if exception is raised, then only this function will be called. Each and every function called automatically. We don't want to call any function from this class. All the function will be called automatically, but a particular action should be happened over there. So this function will be called if the exception is there. If in your project is there any exception will be raised. So in that time it calls this one. Now def, last but not the least, process underscore template underscore response, which taking two parameters, request and response, which taking two parameters. When this function will be called, this function this function will be called or we can say that it will be executed, whatever it will be called, if if the response if the response contain, or I can say that if the request is render is request if request is render to the template using render method, so these are the total 5 functions are there, but most probably these 2 functions are utilized. ये अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट एक्स्ट्रा स्टफ ऑफ टास्क के लिए कि अगर आपको व्यूज प्रोसेसिंग व्यू, ड्यूरिंग द प्रोसेसिंग ऑफ व्यू इफ यू वांट टू डू एनीथिंग you can do with this one also. Otherwise processing exception, process exception, if the exception is raised and that time you have to perform some background tasks, if you want to perform some background tasks at the time of exception is raised in application, then I should go with this one. If you want to perform some extra task at the time of rendering, so I'll go with this one. So render ke time pe if you want to do something, I'll go with this method. If you want to do something at the time of exception will be raised, then I'll go with this function. Before view execution, I'll go with this function. So either these two, otherwise I'll call these 2 functions. So total these 5 functions are provided by the middleware to you. We can't change the spelling, we can't change the name of the spelling, name of any function. We have to call them function as it is, as they are defined. So let's take one basic example of it. So already my project is already created are there. So what I will do, I'll close all the files. How I start it. My package is already created, so I don't want to create a package. Even my model is already created, so I don't want to create my model again. But if you want to create a separate model for the for each middleware, so I can do that as well. So choice is yours completely. So I created separate model, my middleware 2.py. I created my middleware separate file over there. Within that, I'll create a class. Creating middleware using class. So class my middleware. Cool. So def double underscore init double underscore self comma get response colon self dot get response equals to get response. So I did this. Now I'll just call it def double underscore auth. I don't want any kind of parameters, so I'll remove it. It returns any, so any is a small pass. Now here what I'm do function क्या करना है, तो आई जस्ट वांट टू प्रिंट मैसेज जैसे मैंने लास्ट टाइम किया था इन द लास्ट डेमो ऑफ वन this one. So I'm just printing the simple message. So that same message I will be conveyed here also. So middleware performing its task before request processing. Now I'll call my middleware. So how I call my middleware over there? So response equals to self dot get response of request of request. So that's request parameter I have to declare here. Now here I'll print the same method. Middleware performing its task after request processing. After request processing. So once it's done, I'll just return response. Enough. Saved it. My middleware is ready. My middleware is ready now because other functions are what optional. If you want it, you can use it. If you want to do any task at a time of exception raising and all. So I'll be go with that one. Sorry. So now I'll configure my middleware. So my middleware is ready. So I share this code with you all. Now we need to configure it. So I'll go to my settings.py. In my middleware list, these are the already configured middlewares. So I'll comment this one also. I'll just comment this one also. So यहाँ पे इसको differentiate करने के लिए क्या करें हम लोग, because same message है ना. Middleware performing starts before request processing class with class और in one में मैं changes कर रहा हूँ, when में I'm in changing it with processing request before request processing with function. So we get both are getting call or not. Just I'm editing both the message same. Just with function दोनों में मैसेज डाला है मैंने. So my both middlewares get edited. अभी मुझे इसको कॉन्फ़िगर करना है. इसको कॉन्फ़िगर किससे करना है? So first of all I'll put the comma. Then I'll write the app name where I create a middleware. So I create a middleware inside a first app. So I'll write it the first app dot. Then the package name where I save it dot. Then my model name. Now I'll change the model name. Model name is what now? Middleware 2. So that's why I write it middleware 2 dot middleware name, middleware class name, middleware function name and middleware class name. So my middleware. So I'll copy it, paste it. my middleware. So like that I'll define here my middleware. So my configuration is done successfully. So this is the way of to configure it. जैसे आपको कॉन्फ़िगर करना होता है, आपने पढ़ा था कॉन्फ़िगर इट, तो देयर आर टू वेज फॉर कॉन्फ़िगरिंग इट. सो मिडलवेयर लिस्ट आप यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं, मिडलवेयर लिस्ट ऑलरेडी इज देयर. मिडलवेयर लिस्ट, there is a middleware list is there, square bracket, middleware list is already over there. And within that we have to list out all middlewares. So जितने भी number of middlewares are there, we should configure them. We should configure them over there. जितने भी number of middlewares are there. So I'll write it all middlewares. Then हम लोग हमारे middlewares लिखेंगे. So when you write it your own middlewares, so first of all how you configure them? So first of all app name is there. After the app name, we have to write it the package name, middleware package name, middleware package name dot model name, middleware model name. What are the model name we will give it? That one. Module name, middleware model name dot function name. Function name. ये हो गया function base के लिए. Same as I have to copy it, paste it again. In same app, we have to write it the same thing. Just function name की जगह पे, if your middleware is created using class, so the class name will be there. So either class name or either function name will be changed. बाकी everything will same. App name, middleware name, uh, then your model name of middleware, and then last but not least function or class which where we configure it. So this one. So here I'll doing it. ये मेरे दो function based वाले थे और ये मेरा class based वाला. So my middlewares are ready. So you guys can also configure it in your views. Now let's see is it executed or not. Initialize. See my middleware initialize. I'll write it one more message in init. Let's see ये initialize हुआ कि नहीं. Class based middleware is initialized. Visitor counter. Oh, I'll remove. my all middleware will be get executed. So guys, यहाँ पे order matter कर रहा है क्या? Is it? Can you able to see there? First is executed middleware, which one? Class one. Then it execute a visitor one. Then it gives executed the my middleware. So which order it follow? Last in first out. Am I correct? Last in first out. मतलब whatever the last middleware is there, it will be execute first, then the second one, second last, then the third last, and so on. The first middleware will be execute the last. First middleware which we configured, which execute last. Let's see. I'll change the order here. Cut it and paste it. Now class middleware को मैंने ऊपर डाला, बाकी दोनों को नीचे डाला. Saved it. Now I'll check out. Reloading. Double comma. Now let's see. See, now visitor middleware is initialized first, then the my middleware is initialized, and then the class base. So why class base is execute last? Because it is a, as per my coding, is the first one over there. मेरे middleware के तीनों middleware में class base is the first one. That's why it is the last over here. And in my visitor count, visitor is the one last. So Django execute it first. तो stack को follow करते हैं last in first out. Whatever the last middleware, the order is matter there. Now let's see it's working or not. Further things. So I'll go to the browser. Refresh. See, class based middleware initialize, then middleware performing its task before requesting processing with class with function, view function, then function will be called. So सारे middlewares will be execute first. Once all middleware get executed before requesting, then all middleware will get executed after view function also, after request processing. So then बीच में आपका view call होगा. View function is called and stop. तो देखो क्लास वाला भी हो रहा है विद फंक्शन भी हो रहा है. सो बोथ मिडलवेयर आर एग्जीक्यूटेड जो भी आपने कोड किया. तो आप द सेम टास्क वी विल डू विद द क्लास एज वेल. तो आप लोग ट्राई करो ये वाला एंड लेट मी नो इट्स वर्किंग और नॉट. Once you are guys done with this, just let me know. सर ये प्रिंट में मैसेज लिखा वही.
सर वो लिखा है ना हम लोगों ने मिडलवेयर परफॉर्म.
यस यस योगिता.
हाँ वो मैसेज नहीं आया.
Just see the spelling of call is writing correct or not. Double underscore call double underscore with two parameters. Just check the spelling. इंडेंटेशन इट इज बाहर है क्लास के या अंदर है, लेट्स चेक आउट दैट एज वेल. अदरवाइज शेयर योर स्क्रीन, लेट मी चेक. Yes, what about others? Those out